Welcome to my Channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. The realtor's smile faltered for just a second when I asked about the basement. That should have been my first warning. But at $28,000 under market value in Denver's insane housing market, I wasn't asking too many questions. I should have. If you're listening to this right now, comfortable in your bed, maybe with the lights dimmed low, I need you to do something for me. Check your own foundation. Not tomorrow, tonight. Because what I found beneath my house, it's still down there. And I don't think mine is the only one. Before I tell you what happened, hit that subscribe button. Not because I want views, but because you need to know what signs to look for. And trust me, after what I'm about to tell you, you'll be checking every crack in your walls differently. The story begins now. My name is Sarah Chen, and 3 months ago, I bought my first house. A 1950s ranch-style home in Aurora, just outside Denver. The American dream, right? White picket fence, 2-car garage, and that peculiar smell all old houses have. Like decades of other people's lives soaked into the walls. The previous owners, the Waylands, had lived there for 43 years. They were eager to sell. Too eager, looking back. Mrs. Wayland kept touching the small cross necklace during the closing, her fingers working it like worry beads. Mr. Wayland just stared at the paperwork, signing everything without reading. "You'll love it here," Mrs. Wayland said, her voice thin as tissue paper. "It's been a good home. Just remember that some things are better left alone." I laughed it off. Old people say weird things sometimes, right? The first 2 weeks were perfect. I painted the walls sage green, hung my collection of vintage Colorado postcards, and even started a small herb garden. The house creaked and settled at night, but that was normal. Old bones adjusting to new ownership. Then I decided to check out the basement. The door was behind the water heater in the utility room, painted over so many times it took a crowbar to open. The smell hit me first. Not mold or dampness, but something else. Something organic and wrong, like meat left in the sun. I gagged, pulling my shirt over my nose. The wooden steps groaned under my weight. My phone's flashlight barely penetrated the darkness below. Each step down felt like descending into a mouth, the house swallowing me whole. The basement was small, maybe 10 by 12 feet. Dirt floor, stone walls that wept moisture. But it was the far wall that made me stop breathing. Someone had tried to cement over it, but the cement had cracked and crumbled in places. Through the gaps I could see older stone, much older. And carved into that stone were symbols, not graffiti. These were deep, deliberate cuts that must have taken incredible effort. I took photos, my hands shaking so badly most came out blurred. The symbols looked almost like letters, but wrong. Like someone trying to write who had never seen written language before. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about those symbols. I posted the clearest photo on a local history forum, asking if anyone recognized them. The responses were mostly jokes, until someone named History Hunter 1882 sent me a private message. "Delete that photo, now, and whatever you do, don't dig." I messaged back, asking why. No response. Their account was deleted an hour later, but I've never been good at leaving things alone. Mom always said my curiosity would get me killed. I really wish she'd been wrong about that. I went back down the next morning with better lights and a small hand trowel, just to see what was under the dirt, just a little bit. The first thing I found was fabric, rotted and black, but definitely fabric. Maybe an old tarp? I pulled gently and more came free. Too much. This wasn't a tarp. It was clothing. My stomach twisted as I uncovered more, a sleeve, a collar. The fabric had fused with the dirt over time, creating this horrible textile fossil. I should have stopped. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, but I kept digging. The button was what made it real. A small mother-of-pearl button, still somehow shining despite the decades of dirt. The kind they used on expensive shirts in the 1940s. My grandfather had shirts with buttons like that. I sat back on my heels, dirt under my fingernails, trying to process what I was seeing. Someone had been buried in my basement. Not in a coffin, not with any kind of ceremony, just put in the ground and covered up. I should have called the police right then. That's what normal people do when they find bodies. But something about those symbols on the wall made me hesitate. They seemed to pulse in my peripheral vision, like they were trying to tell me something. I spent the next 3 hours carefully excavating. The body, or what was left of it, was laid out with disturbing precision. Arms crossed over the chest, legs straight, like someone had taken great care with the positioning. But it was what I found next that changed everything. There wasn't just one body. As I cleared more dirt, I found another sleeve. Different fabric. Different decade by the look of it. This one was rougher, working man's cloth, and beyond that, another and another, 7 bodies in total, stacked like cordwood in my 10 by 12 basement. The oldest was barely more than bones wrapped in what might have been leather. The newest couldn't have been more than 20 years old. Modern synthetic fabric, a Rockies baseball team logo still visible on what was left of the shirt. I stumbled back, hand over my mouth, fighting the urge to vomit. That's when I noticed something else. The bodies weren't random. They were arranged in a pattern, the same pattern as the symbols on the wall. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Stop digging. I stared at the message, then at the bodies, then back at my phone. Another message appeared. They were necessary. You don't understand what's down there. I typed back with shaking fingers. Who is this? Someone who tried to warn you. Check the deed to your house, the real deed. County records, not what they gave you at closing. The Aurora County Records Office smelled like old paper and disappointment. The clerk, a woman who looked like she'd been working there since the building opened, barely glanced up when I asked about my property. Address? I gave it to her. She typed slowly, hunt and peck style, squinting at the screen. That's odd. My heart skipped. What's odd? Well, there's the deed from the recent sale, but hold on. She disappeared into the back, returning with a leather-bound ledger that looked ancient. Sometimes the old records don't make it into the system. She flipped through pages brittle as autumn leaves, running her finger down columns of faded ink. Here we go. Original plot, 1889. But there's a note here. Property condemned 1892, reopened 1893 under new ownership. Then condemned again 1911. Reopened 1912. This pattern continues. She looked up at me over her reading glasses. 7 times. Your property has been condemned and reopened 7 times. Always for the same reason. What reason? She turned the ledger toward me. In spidery handwriting, someone had written, Foundation unstable, geological anomaly. Do not disturb lower levels. Geological anomaly? I asked. The clerk shrugged. Could mean anything. Sinkhole, underground stream, natural gas pocket. Old-timers weren't very specific with their terminology, but I knew it wasn't any of those things. I'd felt it the moment I'd entered that basement. The wrongness in the air, the way the symbols seemed to watch me. Is there any record of who owned it during those condemned periods? She checked. That's the strange part. No one. The property just sat empty. Then someone new would buy it, live there for a few years, and it would be condemned again. Like clockwork. I drove home in a daze. 7 bodies. 7 condemnations. It couldn't be a coincidence. Mrs. Whalen's words echoed in my head. Some things are better left alone. What had they known? What had they been hiding? As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed something I'd missed before. My elderly neighbor, Mr. Garrison, was standing at his window watching my house. He'd been friendly enough when I moved in, bringing over cookies and welcoming me to the neighborhood. But now his face was different. Worried, almost afraid. I waved. He quickly pulled his curtain shut. That night, I couldn't bring myself to go back in the basement. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, researching everything I could about my property. The original plot had been purchased by a man named Ezekiel Morrison. The name seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. Then I found it. A scanned newspaper article from 1892. Local businessman disappears. Ezekiel Morrison, prominent member of the community, vanished from his home Tuesday evening. His wife reports strange sounds from beneath the house in the days leading to his disappearance. Police suspect foul play. The article included a grainy photograph. Morrison stood stiff and formal in the style of the time, but it was what hung around his neck that made my blood run cold. The same symbols from my basement wall worked into a metal pendant. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those bodies arranged in their careful pattern, heard the whisper of fabric rotting into earth, felt those symbols watching me from the wall. At 3 a.m., I gave up and made coffee. That's when I heard it. A sound from below. Not the settling of an old house, not pipes or furnace noise. This was deliberate, rhythmic, scratching. I stood frozen in my kitchen, coffee mug halfway to my lips. The sound came again, scratch, 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 like fingernails on wood. My logical brain said, animals. Rats maybe, or a raccoon that had somehow gotten into the basement. But the primitive part of my brain, the part that once kept us alive in dark forests, knew better. The scratching stopped. Then, clear as day, I heard footsteps on the basement stairs. I grabbed a knife from the block, my hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The footsteps were slow, measured. They reached the top of the stairs and stopped. The utility room door was closed. I'd made sure of it. I always made sure of it now. I watched the doorknob, waiting for it to turn. Nothing. Minutes passed. 5. 10. My arm ached from holding the knife. Finally, I crept toward the door, pressed my ear against it. Breathing. Slow, wet breathing. Like lungs full of dirt trying to remember how to work. I jerked back, stumbled, knocked over a chair. The breathing stopped. Then footsteps again. Descending this time, back into the basement. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When the sun finally came up, I called in sick to work and sat on my front porch, trying to look normal while my insides twisted into knots. Rough night? I jumped. Mr. Garrison stood at the fence between our yards, holding a steaming mug. You could say that. He studied me for a long moment. You found them, didn't you, the bodies? The knife slipped from my numb fingers. You knew? Everyone on this street knows. Or at least, the ones who've been here long enough. He sipped his coffee. The Whalens lasted longer than most. 43 years, that's a record. Why didn't anyone tell me? Would you have believed us? Oh, by the way, don't buy that house. It's got corpses in the basement and something worse underneath them. He shook his head. Besides, someone has to live there. That's the deal. What deal? What are you talking about? He glanced around nervously, then leaned closer. Come over tonight. After dark, bring whatever research you've done. And Sarah? His voice dropped to a whisper. Whatever you heard last night, don't go looking for it. It's not time yet. The day crawled by. I tried to distract myself with work emails, Netflix, anything. But my eyes kept drifting to the utility room door. I'd wedged a chair under the knob, just in case. As soon as darkness fell, I grabbed my laptop and photos and headed to Mr. Garrison's house. It was a mirror image of mine, same layout, but somehow warmer. Lived in. Safe. There were others there. Mrs. Martinez from 2 houses down. the young couple from the corner, the Nguyens. Even the mailman, though I'd never seen him out of uniform before, they all looked at me with the same mixture of pity and relief. "So," Mr. Garrison said, gesturing to a chair, "tell us what you found." I laid out everything: the bodies, the symbols, the records, Morrison's pendant. They listened without interrupting, occasionally exchanging knowing looks. When I finished, Mrs. Martinez spoke first. "It's earlier than usual. The last family had 6 years before it started." "Maybe because she dug them up," the mailman suggested. "Disturbed the pattern." "Pattern?" I asked. "What pattern? What's going on?" Mr. Garrison pulled out a photo album, flipped to a black and white picture. This was taken in 1925, neighborhood picnic. I looked closer. There was my house in the background, and standing in front of it, a family of 4, but something was wrong with the picture. Behind them, in what should have been empty air, was a shadow, vaguely human-shaped, but too tall, too thin. He flipped the page. Another photo, 1943. Different family, same house, same shadow. Page after page, year after year, the shadow was always there, getting clearer, more defined. This is from last year. The final photo showed the Whalens at their 40th anniversary party. The shadow behind them was almost solid now, almost human. Almost. "It feeds on them," Mrs. Martinez said quietly. "The families. It takes one every so often, adds them to the collection in the basement. That keeps it satisfied, contained." "Bullshit." The word came out harsher than I intended. "This is insane. You're all insane." "The Morrisons were the first," Mr. Garrison continued as if I hadn't spoken. "Ezekiel found something when he was digging the foundation, something that should have stayed buried. He tried to control it, bind it with those symbols, but it took him anyway, and it's been taking people ever since. Then why doesn't someone just leave it empty, tear down the house?" They all looked at each other. The mailman cleared his throat. "We tried that. 1963, the city condemned it, had it demolished. 3 days later, everyone on the street started having the same nightmare, the same visitor. Children went missing. Pets were found turned inside out. The message was clear: rebuild the house, give it a family to watch, or it takes the whole neighborhood." "So, every family that lives there is a sacrifice? Is that what you're telling me?" "Not a sacrifice," Mrs. Martinez said. "A guardian. As long as someone lives there, keeps it fed, the rest of us are safe. It's horrible, yes, but it works." I stood up so fast my chair fell over. "And you just let people move in, families, knowing what's waiting for them." "The families last years, sometimes decades," Mr. Garrison said. "And they live good lives until the end. The house is always priced to sell fast. The neighborhood watches out for them. We make their time as good as it can be." "You're all complicit. You're all murderers." "No," the mailman said firmly. "We're survivors. And now you are too. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I left Mr. Garrison's house feeling hollowed out, like someone had scooped out my insides and replaced them with ice. Everything made a sick kind of sense now. The too good price, the Whalens' nervousness, the way the neighborhood had welcomed me so warmly, like they were grateful. I sat in my car for an hour, engine running, trying to decide what to do. Call the FBI? Post everything online? Run? But I kept thinking about what the mailman had said, the children going missing, pets turned inside out. If even half of what they told me was true, leaving would doom innocent people. My phone buzzed, another unknown number. "It knows you know. Be ready." I looked up at my house. Every window was dark except one. The basement window I didn't even know I had. A pale light flickered behind the dirty glass. That's when I realized I'd left my laptop at Mr. Garrison's. All my evidence, all my photos. I cursed, started to get out of the car, then stopped. Something was standing in my living room window. Not the shadow from the photographs. This was solid, real, human-shaped, but wrong. Too tall for the ceiling, it had to bend at an impossible angle. Even from the street, I could see it was made of earth and fabric and something else. Something that might once have been flesh. It raised one long arm and beckoned. I'd like to tell you I was brave, that I marched in there and faced whatever nightmare had been living under my house. But I didn't. I drove to a motel and spent the night huddled under cheap covers, jumping at every sound. The next morning, exhaustion won over fear. I had to go back. My life was in that house, my clothes, my work, everything. The front door was open. I pushed it wide with my foot, ready to run. The house was exactly as I'd left it, except for the dirt. Footprints of earth led from the utility room through the kitchen, the living room, up the stairs. They stopped at my bedroom door. My bedroom door was closed. I never closed it. Heart hammering, I turned the knob. The thing from the basement had left me a message. Written in dirt on my bedroom wall, in those same ancient symbols. But underneath, in English, someone had translated, "One more to complete the pattern. Choose or be chosen." I understood then. 7 bodies, 7 condemnations, 7 families to pay for whatever Morrison had disturbed. The Whalens had been the 7th. The pattern should have been complete, but I'd disturbed it, dug them up, broken the seal. Now it needed an 8th. I spent 3 days researching, barely sleeping, living on coffee and fear. The symbols weren't random. They were a binding spell, something Morrison had cobbled together from a dozen different occult traditions. He'd been trying to contain something that had no name, something that had been sleeping in the earth since before humans walked upright. The Aurora Library had one book that mentioned it. Subterranean Anomalies of the Colorado Territory by Dr. Helena Voss, published 1889. Most of it was geological surveys, but one chapter made my blood run cold. The indigenous peoples of this region spoke of places where the earth was wrong, places where the boundary between our world and others grew thin. They marked these spots and avoided them. When settlers arrived, they ignored these warnings. They built on cursed ground, and they paid the price. There was a map. My house sat dead center on one of the marked spots. Dr. Voss had interviewed a Cheyenne elder who told her, "What sleeps below should not wake. But men dig, always dig, and when they dig too deep, they must feed the earth to make it sleep again." Feed the earth. 7 bodies over more than a century. 7 payments to keep something sleeping. But now it was awake, and it wanted an 8th. The scrap clever. The door creaked as it leaned against it. But cleverness won't save you. One more is needed. The 8th to complete what the first began. Choose another, or be chosen yourself. Why 8? The pattern was 7. 7 to sleep, 8 to seal. Morrison knew this. He chose himself as the first, thinking his sacrifice would be enough. But the earth demands balance, 7 taken unwillingly, 1 given freely. Really? I laughed, high and hysterical. None of them were given freely. No, that's why the pattern fails. Why I wake again and again. Each time weaker, each time needing more. Until someone understands. Until someone chooses. Something clicked in my mind. The Whalens had lived there for 43 years. Longer than any family before them. They'd known what was under their house, had kept it fed, kept it sleeping, but they'd also been looking for a way out. They'd been looking for someone like me, someone who would dig, who would understand, who would have a choice. If I choose myself, I said slowly, it ends. No more families, no more deaths. If you choose freely, with full knowledge, the binding completes. The 8th seal locks. I return to sleeping and the earth forgets this place exists. How do I know you're telling the truth? You don't. There was something almost like sadness in that grinding voice. But you've seen the pattern, 7 unwilling taken, 1 willing would balance the equation. Mathematics of the cosmos. As above, so below. I thought about the families who would come after me, the children who would play in that yard, never knowing what slept beneath, the parents who would tuck them in at night, counting down to their own doom. Then I thought about Mr. Garrison and the others, living their whole lives in the shadow of this thing, complicit in horror because the alternative was worse. If I do this, I said, the house gets destroyed. No one builds here again. The land goes back to what it was. Agreed. And the 7 below get proper burial. Their families get to know what happened. Agreed. I took a deep breath. Thought about my mother, my sister in Portland, my ex who still texted sometimes. They'd never understand. But maybe that was better. I need 3 days to get my affairs in order. The thing beyond the door was quiet for so long I thought it had left. Then, 3 days, but know this. If you run, I will take the 8th from those you love. The pattern will complete, one way or another. The pressure at my door eased. I heard it descending the stairs, returning to its basement. When I finally opened my door at dawn, only the dirt remained. I'm recording this on my last day. I've transferred the house deed to a conservation group with strict instructions to demolish and never rebuild. I've written letters to everyone I care about. Told them I'm going traveling, might be out of touch for a while. Better they think I ghosted them than know the truth. Mr. Garrison tried to talk me out of it. Said there had to be another way, but we both know there isn't. The pattern demands completion, and maybe it's time someone made the hard choice. If you're listening to this, it means I uploaded it to every platform I could find. Not for fame or views, but as a warning. Check your foundations, research your property history, and if you find something that should have stayed buried, leave it alone. Some prices are too high for any home. Tomorrow, I go down to the basement one last time. I'll lie down with the others, in the spot I've prepared. The 8th point of the seal. And if the thing below keeps its word, I'll be the last. The house on Elm Street in Aurora will be gone within the week. The land will be empty. And what sleeps below will sleep forever, locked by 8 lives given in payment for one man's curiosity. Don't pity me. I could run. I could let it take someone else. But every family that moved in after me would be my responsibility. Every child, every parent, every life cut short because I was too cowardly to end it. This is my choice, freely made. But here's what haunts me, what keeps me up on this last night. The thing below said 7 taken unwillingly, 1 given freely. But what if all 8 need to be willing? What if that's why the pattern never held? What if Morrison knew exactly what he was doing? What if he's been down there all along, waiting for 7 others to join him willingly? What if I'm not ending anything at all, but beginning something worse? If you're still listening, if this story kept you up, check your basement, check your foundation, and whatever you do, whatever you find, don't dig. Some patterns, once started, demand completion, and some prices we pay forever. Subscribe if you need to know what happened next. Comment if you found something similar in your own home. Share this with anyone buying an old house, because I won't be able to warn anyone after tomorrow, and something tells me I won't be the last to find what should have stayed buried. Sweet dreams. End of recording. Story number 2. What would you do if your car died at midnight, on a road where no car ever gets found? I'm about to tell you something that will make you think twice before taking that shortcut home. Something that happened last October on Highway 49, at the exact spot locals call Dead Man's Curve. But first, subscribe and hit that bell icon, because what I'm sharing tonight might just save your life, and trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Now, Let me tell you what really happens to the cars that break down there. The story begins now. The check engine light had been flickering for 3 days. I know, I should have taken my Honda Civic to Mike's auto shop on Maple Street, but graduate school bills don't pay themselves, and I figured I could squeeze another week out of her. That was my first mistake. My name's Rachel, and I work nights at the Riverside Medical Center. October 23rd was supposed to be just another Tuesday. Clock out at 11:30, drive the 40 minutes back to my apartment, microwave some leftover Chinese food, and crash. The rain started as I merged onto Highway 49. Not a downpour, just that steady October drizzle that makes your wipers squeak every third swipe, the kind that turns your headlights into fuzzy halos. I remember passing the last gas station. The Shell with the broken neon sign where the S flickers like it's trying to spell out an SOS. Should have stopped. Should have grabbed a coffee, checked the oil, done something. But I didn't. The road narrowed after mile marker 17. That's where the forest crowds in. Where the streetlights stop pretending to care. Just you, your high beams, and whatever's hiding between those pine trees. Dead Man's Curve starts at mile marker 23. You know it's coming because the road signs multiply. Reduce speed, sharp curve ahead. Trucks use lower gear. And then, that last one. The one someone spray painted over years ago. But you can still read the original text underneath. Last chance to turn back. The locals say it used to be a legitimate warning sign from the 1970s, back when the logging trucks would jackknife there every winter. But the county claims they never authorized that wording. Someone's lying. My engine coughed at 11:47 p.m. Just once, like clearing its throat. Then again at 11:51, right as I entered the curve. The speedometer dropped. 60, 50, 40? The radio crackled, static eating through my favorite classic rock station, the one that plays Boston and Journey on repeat. The sound made my teeth ache. 30 miles per hour. 20. The engine died at 11:54 p.m. I know because the dashboard clock froze at that exact moment, and it's never worked since. Coasting in neutral. I managed to pull onto what passed for a shoulder. Just a strip of gravel between the asphalt and a wall of Douglas firs so thick you couldn't see past the first row. The silence hit different out there. Not peaceful, but heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. I tried the ignition. Click, click, click. Battery was fine. I'd just replaced it in August. The lights still worked. Radio still hissed static, but the engine, nothing. I grabbed my phone. 2 bars. Thank God for Verizon. Mike's auto shop was closed. Obviously. AAA said 45 minutes to an hour. The dispatcher sounded tired. Bored, even. Just another breakdown on Highway 49. You said Dead Man's Curve, she asked. And I swear her voice changed, got quieter. Lock your doors. Keep your lights on. Driver will honk 3 times when they arrive. 3 times. You hear me? Weird thing to say, but okay. I settled in to wait. Kept the hazards blinking, interior light on. Scrolled through Instagram. Watched my battery percentage drop. 80%, 75. That's when I saw the first car, a sedan. Couldn't tell the make in the dark. Creeping around the curve at maybe 10 miles per hour. Its headlights swept across my car. Slowed even more. Then continued past. Normal, right? Cautious driver on a dangerous curve. Except, the same car came by again 12 minutes later. Same speed. Same careful crawl. This time, I caught a glimpse of the driver. Nobody. The driver's seat was empty. I rubbed my eyes. Lack of sleep, 12-hour shift, had to be seeing things. The third time it passed, I was watching carefully. Definitely a Toyota Camry. Late 90s model, faded blue paint, license plate too muddy to read. And definitely, absolutely, nobody driving. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Get out, that's all. 2 words. I didn't respond. Probably some stupid prank or a wrong number. Another text, they collect at midnight. My dashboard clock still read 11:54. A different car rounded the curve. A pickup truck this time, Ford F-150. Also crawling along at that same unnaturally slow pace, also empty. Then a minivan, a Volkswagen Beetle, another sedan, all empty, all moving at exactly the same speed, like a funeral procession for cars that forgot to bring their drivers. I texted back, "Who is this?" The response came instantly, "Check your mirror." I did. Nothing in the rear view but darkness. The other one. My hands shook as I adjusted the side mirror. A face, pressed against my rear passenger window, pale, eyes too wide, mouth moving like it was trying to speak, but the face, it wasn't attached to a body, just floating there, pressed against the glass like a Halloween cling decoration. I screamed, couldn't help it. When I looked again, nothing, just raindrops trailing down the window. My phone rang. AAA. "Ma'am, this is dispatch. Our driver reports he can't find you. Says there's no broken down vehicle at Dead Man's Curve." "What? I'm right here. Silver Honda Civic. Hazards on. He's driven through twice. Are you sure you gave us the right location?" I looked out at the road. The empty cars were still passing, a whole parade of them now. Some looked new. Others were rusted classics from decades past. I'm here, right at the curve, mile marker 23. Silence. Then, "Ma'am, our GPS shows you're not on Highway 49. It says you're... Hold on, this can't be right." "What? Where does it say I am?" "According to this, you're nowhere. The signal's coming from a location that doesn't exist. Underscore 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 underscore. The dashboard clock flickered. 11:55. 1 minute. That's all that had passed, but I'd been sitting here for over an hour. The empty cars kept coming. I counted 37 before I stopped. Some circled back, like they were stuck in a loop. Others disappeared around the bend and never returned. I tried calling 911. The call connected, but all I heard was breathing. Wet, raspy breathing. "Hello, this is an emergency." The breathing got louder, then a whisper. "You should have taken Riverside Avenue." Click, Riverside Avenue. The long way home. 20 minutes extra, but well lit. Safe. I took Highway 49 to save time, my second mistake. The faces came next, not just one, dozens. Pressed against every window, men, women, teenagers, all pale, all mouthing words I couldn't hear. Their eyes followed me as I scrambled into the back seat, then the front again. That's when I noticed the pattern. Each face appeared for exactly 13 seconds. I counted. They'd press against the glass, mouth their silent message, then fade, like they were taking turns. An old man with a John Deere cap, a woman in nurse scrubs, a kid who couldn't have been older than 19. All different. All desperate. My phone buzzed. That unknown number again. "Look in your glove box." I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed not to. But what choice did I have? Inside, beneath my registration and an old pack of gum, was a folded piece of paper. Yellowed, brittle, like it had been there for decades. But I'd cleaned out that glove box last month. I unfolded it. Newspaper clipping from 1987. 7 vehicles still missing after Dead Man's Curve incidents. State police baffled by disappearances. "It's like they just vanished," says Sergeant Williams. "We find skid marks, sometimes personal belongings, but the cars and drivers are just gone." Below that, another clipping. 1993, Highway 49 disappearances continue. 12 cars now missing. Locals report strange sightings. And another. 2001. Dead Man's Curve claims 5 more. Pattern emerges. All vehicles broke down between 11:45 p.m. and midnight. The last clipping was from 2 weeks ago. Uber driver vanishes on Highway 49. Empty car found running at Dead Man's Curve. Passengers' phone records show impossible location data. I dropped the papers. They scattered across my seats, but when I looked again, they weren't newspaper clippings anymore. They were missing person flyers, all different faces, all different years. All last seen on Highway 49. The dashboard clock clicked to 11:56. Outside, the empty cars had stopped coming. The road was dark, silent. Even the rain had paused. Then I heard it. An engine. But not from the road, from everywhere. Like the sound was coming from inside the forest. Beneath the asphalt, above in the clouds. A massive engine, industrial, hungry. The trees began to sway, not from wind. They were leaning. Toward the road, toward me. My phone lit up. Call from Mom. But Mom died 3 years ago, I answered, couldn't help myself. Rachel, sweetheart. Her voice. Exactly her voice. You need to run. Now. Leave the car and run. Mom. They're coming for the collection. Every car that breaks down. Every driver who stays, you have 4 minutes. I don't understand. The road needs payment. As since they built it through sacred ground. 1 car per month, but some months it gets greedy. The line crackled. Run, baby, please. Dead air, 11:57. I grabbed my keys. Phone. Nothing else mattered. Pushed open the door. The asphalt was soft, like stepping on flesh. It gave under my feet, warm despite the October cold. Behind me, my Honda's lights flickered. The engine tried to start on its own. Coughing, sputtering. Like it was being forced, I ran. The ground kept shifting. Each step sank deeper. The yellow center line writhed like a snake. The road was alive, and it was waking up. 11:58, headlights behind me, but not normal headlights. These were eyes. Massive, ancient, opening after a long sleep. The engine sound grew louder. Mechanical breathing. Diesel exhaust that smelled like decay. I couldn't run on the road anymore. It grabbed at my ankles, tried to pull me down, so I crashed into the forest. Branches tore at my jacket. Roots caught my feet, but solid ground. Real ground. Behind me, I heard my Honda start. The engine roared to life. But wrong. Too loud, too angry, like something else was wearing it. 11:59. I stumbled, fell, got up, kept running. The trees were thick, but I could see lights ahead. Another road, Riverside Avenue. Somehow I'd circled back. The thing behind me was gaining. Not just my car now. All of them. Every empty vehicle. Forming something larger. A writhing mass of metal and rubber and glass. I burst through the tree line. Hit asphalt, real asphalt this time. Hard, cold, beautiful. A truck honked, swerved, missed me by inches, but alive. A real truck with a real driver who yelled real curse words. I turned back. Nothing, just trees. Silent. Still. The forest edge looked exactly as it always did. Highway 49 was invisible from here, hidden by the curve of the hill. My phone showed 12:03 a.m. I walked 3 miles to the nearest gas station, called a real tow truck. Went back the next morning with the driver. My Honda was right where I'd left it. Keys in the ignition. Tank full of gas. It started on the first try. The mechanic found nothing wrong. Just a loose battery cable, Mike said. Happens all the time. But I knew, and now you know too. I did research. Dug through county records, old newspapers, internet forums. Dead Man's Curve has been taking cars since 1973. Always between 11:45 and midnight. Always when they break down. The lucky ones. Their cars just start working again at 12:01. They drive away, never speak of it. The unlucky ones. Well, you've seen the missing person flyers. I found a pattern, one detail everyone missed. Every person who disappeared. They'd driven that route before. Many times. It was familiar, routine. They got comfortable. The road remembers. I take Riverside Avenue now. Every night. 20 minutes extra, don't care. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed, I hear engines in the distance. Not normal engines. That industrial breathing. That mechanical hunger. And I check my phone. 3 months after that night, I got one final text from that unknown number. You were marked, we'll wait. My Honda still runs perfect. Too perfect. Sometimes I catch the odometer rolling backward. Sometimes the radio plays stations that don't exist. Static that sounds like voices. Mike can't explain why my oil never needs changing. Why my tires never wear down. Why my gas tank fills itself when I'm not looking. It's like something's taking care of it, he jokes. Guardian angel or something. But I know better. The road wants my car back. Wants me back. It's patient. It can wait. Every night at 11:54, my dashboard clock stops. Just for a minute. A reminder. So let me ask you something. And think carefully before you answer. When you're driving, late at night, and you see that shortcut, the one that saves you 20 minutes, do you take it, or do you remember what I've told you? Do you remember what happens to cars that break down on Dead Man's Curve? Because the road remembers you. It always remembers. And it's hungry. Comment below if you've ever broken down on a dark road. And tell me, did you see empty cars too? Subscribe for more true encounters. And remember, sometimes the long way home is the only way home. Sweet dreams. Wait, before you go, there's something else I haven't told you. Something I found out 6 months later. Something that changes everything. Remember how I said the road remembers? Well, it does more than remember. It learns. April 15th. 6 months after my night at Dead Man's Curve, I was at the Riverside Library, killing time before my shift. They have this local history section in the basement. Dusty, forgotten. The kind of place where books go to die. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just curious. Needed to understand what almost got me. That's where I met Walter. 70s, maybe 80s. Thick glasses held together with electrical tape. Volunteer librarian who'd been there since the Carter administration. He was reshelving books when I asked about Highway 49. His hands stopped moving. You taking the college course on local folklore? He asked. But his eyes said he knew better. No, just interested. He studied me for a long moment. Then, you saw them, the empty ones. Not a question. I nodded. Walter glanced around, made sure we were alone. Then wheeled his cart deeper into the stacks. I followed. My brother Danny disappeared on that curve. 1978. His Mustang, found it 3 days later in a junkyard in Spokane, still running. Keys in the ignition. Danny's coffee still warm in the cup holder. Spokane, that's 400 miles away, yeah. Walter pulled out a manila folder hidden behind a row of encyclopedias. Been collecting these for 43 years. Inside, photos, dozens of them. All cars, all found in impossible places. A Chevy Nova discovered in a sealed barn. Engine running, 30 years after it vanished. A Volkswagen bus found at the bottom of Miller Lake, completely dry inside. Fishermen could hear the radio playing underwater. A Prius, this one made my skin crawl, found in a new car lot, for sale. With dealer stickers claiming it had 0 miles. The VIN matched a car that disappeared 3 years ago. The dealer had no record of acquiring it. They come back, Walter whispered, different, changed. And sometimes they bring passengers. He showed me another photo. Security footage from a parking garage. Grainy, but clear enough. A sedan pulling into a space, normal. except the timestamp showed 3:17 a.m., and through the rear window, you could see faces. Too many faces. Pressed against the glass from inside, at least a dozen in a 5-seat car. That was 2 weeks ago, Walter said. Car belonged to Jennifer Martinez. Disappeared on Dead Man's Curve last Christmas Eve. Cameras caught it driving itself into that garage. Security guard went to check, found it empty, but the seats, they were warm. All of them. My phone buzzed. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Unknown number, of course. Checking in, I showed Walter. His face went pale. They know you're researching. Probably knew the moment you walked into this library. He grabbed my arm. Listen, there's something else. Something I've never told anyone. His voice dropped so low I had to lean in. The road, it's not taking people, it's recruiting them. What? Think about it. Empty cars driving perfect loops. Always the same speed, same route. Like they're patrol cars, guards, keeping watch. For what? Walter pulled out one last photo. Aerial view of Highway 49. Recent. Probably from Google Earth, but modified. Enhanced. Lines drawn connecting points. Every spot where a car vanished, look at the pattern. I looked. Didn't see it at first. Then, a circle. Perfect. With Dead Man's Curve at the exact center. 63 disappearances, 63 points. Takes that many to complete the circle. We're at 62. My blood went cold. When did the last one? 2 weeks ago, that Uber driver. One more, the circle needed one more. And you think... You were marked. You said so yourself. The road let you go. But it remembers. It's waiting. Walter's grip tightened. Whatever you do, don't go back. Not even during the day, not even as a passenger. The road, it's patient. I left the library with photocopies. Research, evidence. Spent the next weeks digging deeper. Found things that made me wish I'd stopped. May rolled around. I'd convinced myself I was safe. Riverside Avenue every night. Never even looked toward Highway 49. The nightmares had mostly stopped. Mostly. Then Megan called. My college roommate, getting married in June. Bachelorette party in Seattle. Could I drive? Her car was in the shop. Sure, I said. What time? Saturday night, late start. Probably leave around 11. That okay? 11, of course. We'll take Riverside, I said quickly. Are you kidding? That adds like half an hour. Highway 49 is right there. My hands went cold. Megan, please, trust me. Riverside. She laughed. Oh my God. You're not still on about that Dead Man's Curve thing. Rachel, that was months ago. You were tired, stressed. It was just a breakdown. Just a breakdown. But I agreed to drive. What else could I do? Tell her the truth? That empty cars patrol that road? That something hungry waits at the center of a 63-point circle? Saturday came too fast. I picked her up at 10:45. 3 other girls in the back seat. Spotify blasting, laughter, normal, safe. Riverside, I asked one more time. Highway 49, Megan insisted. Come on, live a little. I wanted to tell them. Wanted to turn around. But how do you explain cosmic horror to girls doing car karaoke? We merged onto 49 at 11:08. The road felt different, smoother, like it had been recently paved. The forest seemed farther back, less oppressive. Even the moon was out, full and bright. See? Megan nudged me. Perfectly safe. Mile marker 17 passed, then 18, 19. No flickering streetlights, no darkness, just smooth asphalt and clear skies. Had I imagined it all? Mile marker 20, my phone, charging in the cup holder, lit up. Not a call or text. The screen just turned on, bright, too bright. The charging cable was in my apartment, mile marker 21. Static burst through the Bluetooth speakers, just for a second. Then back to Taylor Swift. The girls didn't notice. Too busy singing. Mile marker 22. The road signs looked new. Bright reflective paint. Curve ahead. Reduce speed. Perfect. Official. Safe. No spray paint. No hidden warnings. But underneath, if you looked just right, I could see the shadows of old words. Last chance to turn back. Mile marker 23. Dead Man's Curve. We rounded it at exactly 11:54. Nothing happened. The road curved. We followed it. Emerged on the other side. Simple, normal. The forest looked like any other Pacific Northwest forest. The asphalt was just asphalt. See? Megan laughed. Drama queen. But in the rearview mirror, they were there. All of them. The empty cars. Following in perfect formation. Headlights off. Invisible to everyone but me. The Camry, the F-150, the minivan. My Honda Civic. Wait, I was driving a Subaru. Had borrowed it from Megan. So, why was my Honda? I looked again. The convoy was closer, much closer, too close. But the girls kept singing, kept laughing, like they couldn't see the wall of metal and glass bearing down on us. Guys, I started. The radio cut out. Phone screens went dark. The engine didn't die. Not exactly, but I felt it. A presence. Like something else had its hands on the wheel, too. What the hell? Megan reached for her phone. Don't. The word came out sharper than I meant. In the mirror, the empty cars were gone. No, not gone. Dispersed. Spread out along the tree line. Watching. Waiting. We passed mile marker 24, 25, 26. Nothing else happened. We made it to Seattle. Had our party. Drove back the next day, taking Interstate 5, the long way, the safe way. But I knew the count was wrong. Walter's count. 63 points to complete the circle? No, that was disappearances, cars and drivers who never came back. But what about the ones who did? What about the people like me who escaped? Who got marked but got away? We weren't escapees. We were seeds. Planted. Waiting. The road doesn't just take, it spreads. 3 things happened in June that proved my theory. First, Megan bought a car. Used. Great deal. Too great. A Honda Civic, silver. Same year as mine. Weird coincidence, she said. The dealer couldn't explain why it had no history, no previous owners. Like it just appeared on the lot. Second, I started seeing them. Other marked ones. You can tell by their eyes. The way they glance at mirrors. The way they take the long way. Always the long way. I saw one at Safeway, another at the bank. The barista at my coffee shop. All different ages, all careful, all watching. We don't talk about it. But we know. Third, the dreams started. Not nightmares. Worse. Dreams where I'm driving. Always driving. Highway 49 stretches endless in front of me. The dashboard clock reads 11:54. Forever, 11:54. In the dreams. I'm not alone. The passenger seat is full, the back seat too. Faces I recognize from the missing posters. From Walter's photos. From that night. They're not scary, they're tired. So tired. Almost done, they whisper. Almost time. I wake up with my hands shaped like they're gripping a wheel. July 4th, Independence Day, fireworks and barbecues and American flags. And breaking news, massive sinkhole opens on Highway 49. Road closed indefinitely. The footage was surreal. Where Dead Man's Curve used to be, nothing. A perfect circular hole. 100 feet across. Depth unknown. The road just ended. But that's not what made me pack everything I owned and move to Arizona. It was the interview with the road crew supervisor. Strangest thing, he said. The sinkhole. It's not empty. There's something down there. Machinery. Old. Real old. And it's running. Has been for decades, near as we can tell. They sent down cameras. Drones. Most of the footage was classified. But one image leaked online before they scrubbed it. A vast mechanical structure, gears and pistons and pipes, all connected to things, organic things, growing into the metal. Or maybe the metal was growing into them, and at the center, roads, dozens of them, all leading to the same point. Not just Highway 49, roads from everywhere. A hub, a heart. The image quality was poor, grainy, but I could make out shapes moving through those underground roads. Cars, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all driving, all empty, all waiting. The sinkhole was closed to the public. Military barriers, no explanation. But I knew 63 wasn't the number of points needed to complete the circle. It was the number needed to start it. And somewhere, in that mechanical depths, something had finally begun. I live in Phoenix now. Desert, no forests, no curves, just straight lines and sunlight. But it doesn't matter. Last month, my apartment complex installed new security cameras. State-of-the-art, motion-activated. The footage backs up to the cloud every night at, you guessed it, 11:54. My neighbor drives a silver Honda Civic. She works night shifts at the hospital. The coffee shop on Central Avenue just hired a new barista. He takes the long way to work. There's a pattern. We're spreading. All of us who were marked. We carry it with us. The road doesn't need to be Highway 49. It just needs us. Walter emails me sometimes. Updates. The sinkhole is spreading. Slowly, inch by inch. The military says it's geological instability, natural phenomenon, but the cars keep disappearing. Different roads now, different states, always between 11:45 and midnight. Always at curves. And always they come back. Changed, empty, patrolling, building something. Walter's last email included a map. Every reported disappearance, every empty car sighting, every person who'd been marked and let go. The pattern is massive now. Not a circle. A web connecting cities, states, countries. All roads lead somewhere. We just never asked where. But I think I know now. That mechanical thing beneath Dead Man's Curve. It's not the heart, it's just one organ. One piece of something infinitely larger. Something that's been growing beneath our roads since we first laid asphalt over ancient paths. Something that needs drivers. My new therapist says I'm processing trauma. That my mind created an elaborate fantasy to deal with a simple breakdown. She prescribed pills that help me sleep without dreams, but she drives a silver Honda Civic. And yesterday, when I mentioned Highway 49, her pen stopped moving. Just for a second. Her eyes flicked to the clock. 11:54. Interesting, she said. Tell me more about the empty cars. But her notepad was already full. Pages and pages of notes. More than our 3 sessions could account for. I looked closer. The handwriting wasn't hers, it was mine. So now I'm telling you, all of you, because the marked ones, we're not victims. We're messengers, and the message is simple. The roads are waking up, they're hungry, and they remember everyone who's ever driven them. Check your mirrors. Count the cars at intersections. Notice which ones have drivers. Notice which ones don't. And whatever you do, when your car breaks down late at night, when that check engine light starts blinking, when you're alone on an empty road, don't wait for help, run. Because the road doesn't want your car. It wants you to join the patrol, to drive forever, to help it grow. One more thing, and this is important. That sinkhole on Highway 49? They filled it last week, poured concrete, tons of it, smoothed it over, reopened the road. The concrete cracks, and underneath, I can hear them, the empty cars, still driving, still circling, still waiting. The circle is complete, the web is spreading, and somewhere, on some dark road, someone's check engine light just started blinking. So, tell me, in the comments below, have you noticed them? The empty cars? The marked ones? The roads that feel different after midnight? Because if you have, if you've seen what I've seen, then you know. It's not about Dead Man's Curve anymore. It's about every curve, every road, every mile of asphalt we've ever laid over ground that was never meant to be driven on. Subscribe. Share this story, warn others, because the roads remember, and they're done waiting. Sweet dreams and safe travels, if such a thing still exists. Story number 3. The first time it happened, I was buying coffee at the corner shop on Madison Street, watching the barista's hands fade in and out like a broken television signal. One moment she was solid, pouring my regular medium roast. The next, she was translucent as morning fog. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes. She solidified again, smiled, handed me my change. 20 minutes later, the ambulance siren screamed past my apartment window. Heart attack behind the counter. Dead before the paramedics arrived. That was 3 months ago. Now, I'm sitting in my living room at 2 a.m., all the lights off, trying not to look at my neighbor through the wall, because I can see him. And walls don't matter anymore when someone's about to die. Let me tell you what it's like, this thing I can do, or maybe it's something that's being done to me. I haven't figured that out yet. It started gradually, little flickers at first, like when you catch someone in your peripheral vision but they disappear when you turn to look, except they didn't disappear. They became clearer, more defined, and always, they died within 24 hours. The rules seem simple enough, though I discovered them the hard way. First, I can only see people who will die within the next day. Not a week, not a month. 24 hours, give or take a few minutes. Second, distance doesn't matter. Walls don't matter. Nothing matters. If they're dying soon and they're within about 100 feet of me, I see them like they're standing right in front of me, glowing with this soft, pale light. Third, and this is the worst part, I can't change it. God knows I've tried. Mrs. Chen from apartment 4B was the second one I saw clearly. 73 years old. Always left cookies outside my door during the holidays. I saw her through 3 floors of concrete and steel, sitting in her recliner. That ghostly shimmer around her getting brighter by the hour. I knocked on her door, made up some excuse about smelling gas. She laughed, invited me in for tea, told me everything was fine. I wanted to scream at her to go to the hospital, to call 911, to do something, anything. But what could I say? Excuse me, Mrs. Chen, but you're glowing like a dying firefly and I think you're about to die? She offered me those butter cookies she always made. Her hands looked like starlight. I stayed for an hour, watching her fade in and out, trying to find the words. When I finally left, I called 911 from the hallway, reported a strange smell from her apartment. They found her the next morning, a stroke in her sleep. Peaceful, they said. Peaceful. As if there's anything peaceful about watching someone's last day play out like a horror movie only you can see. I worked, at an insurance firm downtown, the Waterman Building. 32 floors of glass and steel and corporate misery. After Mrs. Chen, I started calling in sick more often. How could I sit in meetings when I could see Gary from accounting flickering like a candle in the wind? How could I focus on spreadsheets when the janitor mopping the hallway was practically transparent? But bills don't stop arriving just because you've developed the world's worst superpower. So I went back, kept my head down, tried not to look at anyone directly. That worked for exactly 3 days. Thursday morning, I stepped into the elevator with 8 other people. Normal morning rush. Everyone checking phones, adjusting ties, sipping coffee. The doors closed, and my blood turned to ice. All of them. Every single person in that elevator was glowing. Not the soft shimmer I'd grown used to seeing. This was different. Brighter, more urgent. Like looking at 8 human-shaped suns crammed into a metal box. The elevator started rising. 3rd floor, 4th, 5th. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I reached for the button panel. Emergency stop. I had to get them out. Had to. Everything okay there, buddy? A man in a gray suit touched my shoulder. His hand felt like static electricity. I think I'm having a panic attack, I managed to say, not a lie, 6th floor, 7th. Just breathe, Gray Suit said. Others murmured sympathetic sounds. Someone offered me water. Their kindness made it worse, they had no idea. How could they? 8th floor. The glow intensified. I jabbed the button for the 10th floor. I need to get out. The longest 20 seconds of my life. When the doors finally opened, I practically fell into the hallway. You should all... I turned back, tried one more time. Maybe take the stairs down. Elevator's been acting weird lately. They smiled, shook their heads. The doors closed. I ran for the stairwell, taking the steps 3 at a time. Maybe if I could get to the ground floor, pull the fire alarm, force an evacuation. The cable snapped on the 15th floor. 8 people. 8 lives. 8 glowing souls I watched disappear into that metal coffin, and I couldn't do a damn thing about it. I never went back to the Waterman building. After the elevator, I stopped leaving my apartment. Groceries delivered. Bills paid online. Work. Well, you can only call in sick so many times before they stop believing you. But what was I supposed to do? Every trip outside was a horror show. The mailman, the dog walker, the kids playing basketball in the park. I never knew who would start glowing. For 2 weeks, I lived like a hermit. Curtains drawn, lights off. If I couldn't see people, maybe I couldn't see them dying. But isolation has its own price. The food deliveries started coming less frequently. The driver probably thought I was some kind of creep, never answering the door, just shouting to leave it outside. My phone rang constantly. Friends, former co-workers, my sister in Denver. Jack, we're worried about you, she said in one of her dozen voicemails. Mom says you won't return her calls. What's going on? How could I explain? Hey sis, I've become a walking death detector. How's your Tuesday going? But then I saw the girl. It was 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. I couldn't sleep. Hadn't been sleeping much at all. And I made the mistake of looking out my window. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, standing at the bus stop across the street. Alone. Glowing like a small star in the darkness. No. I was out the door before I could think. Barefoot, in pajama pants and an old Nirvana t-shirt, running across the empty street. Hey, I called out. Hey kid, where are your parents? She turned to look at me, and my heart shattered. Brown eyes, pigtails, gap-toothed smile. She was wearing a school backpack covered in cartoon stickers. Waiting for the bus, she said simply. It's 3 in the morning. There's no bus. She shrugged. Mom said, wait here. The glow around her pulsed, brighter, dimmer, brighter again, like a heartbeat made of light. I sat down on the bench next to her. What's your name? Emma? Hi, Emma, I'm Jack. Listen, how about we find your mom? It's pretty late for you to be out here alone. She said, wait for the bus. I looked around the empty street. No cars, no people. Just me and this dying little girl, and the weight of knowing I had less than 24 hours to figure this out. Emma, do you know your address? Your phone number? She shook her head. The glow flickered. Think, Jack, think. Are you hungry? There's a 24-hour diner around the corner. We could get some hot chocolate while we wait for the bus. Her eyes lit up. The only part of her that wasn't already glowing. With marshmallows. All the marshmallows you want. We walked to Benny's diner, me trying not to stare at how the light around her seemed to leave trails in the air. Benny himself was working the late shift, and I'd never been so grateful to see someone who wasn't glowing. Little late for her to be out, he said, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, we're trying to find her mom. Can we get 2 hot chocolates? And maybe you could call the police? See if anyone's reported a missing kid? He nodded, disappeared into the back. Emma climbed onto the red vinyl seat, swinging her legs. The glow made her look like a ghost already. No, I wasn't going to let this happen, not to a kid. Emma, tell me about your mom. What's her name? Sarah. That's a pretty name. What about your last name? She scrunched up her face, thinking. Starts with an M, like McDonald's, but not McDonald's. Martinez? Miller? Morgan? Morgan. She bounced in her seat. Emma Morgan, that's me. Benny returned with the hot chocolates and a grim expression. Cops are on their way. And, yeah, there's an Amber Alert. Emma Morgan, age 8. Went missing from her foster home about 4 hours ago. Foster home, of course. Emma, I said carefully, did someone hurt you at your foster home? She shook her head, slurping her hot chocolate. No, but the bad man was coming. What bad man? The one Mom warned me about. She said if I ever saw him, I should run. Wait at the bus stop. She'd find me. My blood ran cold. Emma, your mom. When did she tell you this? Tonight, in my dream. She said the bad man was coming and I had to run. So I did. The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. A foster kid, a warning dream, running into the night. And somewhere out there, someone looking for her. Someone bad enough that a dead mother would reach across the veil to warn her daughter. The glow around Emma intensified. Listen to me, I said urgently. When the police get here, you tell them everything. About the bad man. About why you ran. Everything, okay? She nodded solemnly. 10 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. I explained how I found her, leaving out the glowing part. They took my statement, thanked me, started to lead Emma away. Wait, I said. Can I know what happens? Make sure she's okay? The older officer, badge reading Martinez. And wasn't that a cosmic joke? Nodded. Leave your number. We'll update you. Emma waved goodbye. The glow followed her like a cape. I didn't sleep that night, or the next morning. Every time my phone rang, I jumped. Finally, at 2 p.m., Officer Martinez called. Thought you'd want to know, he said. That foster home she ran from, we found evidence of. Well, let's just say she's lucky she ran when she did. The foster father had plans, bad plans, for tonight. Is Emma okay? She's safe, placed with an emergency family for now. Might have saved her life, finding her when you did. I hung up and cried. For the first time since this curse started, I actually cried. Because maybe I'd finally done something right. Emma didn't die that day. The glow had lied. Or maybe it had shown me what would have happened if she'd stayed at that bus stop. If I'd stayed in my apartment. If I'd let fear keep me inside, maybe the glow wasn't set in stone after all. That night changed everything. I started going out again, started looking for the glow instead of hiding from it. Most times, I still couldn't change anything. But sometimes I could. The teenager at the skate park, glowing as he lined up for a jump. I accidentally knocked over his board. He cursed me out, called me a clumsy old man. 20 minutes later, another kid tried the same jump, compound fracture. If it had been the glowing kid, with the way he landed, it would have been his neck, not his leg. The woman at the grocery store, shimmering as she reached for something on a high shelf. I offered to help, noticed the puddle of spilled olive oil she would have slipped in. Cleaned it up while she wasn't looking. Small things, tiny alterations. Nothing that would make the news or win me any medals. But every life I nudged away from death felt like a victory against whatever cosmic force had cursed me with this sight. I started keeping a journal, names, dates, places. Patterns began to emerge. The glow was brightest for sudden deaths, accidents, violence, things that could be prevented or postponed. It was softer for natural deaths, the elderly, the terminally ill, the ones whose time had simply come. Those I couldn't change. I learned to recognize the difference, to know when to act and when to simply witness. Because that was part of it too, I realized. Sometimes people die alone. Sometimes the only kindness you can offer is being there, even if they don't know it. Even if you're watching through walls and floors and the strange shimmering veil of their final hours. Mr. Petrov in 2C. 91 years old, no family left. I saw him glowing softly through my floor, sitting in his armchair, photo album in his lap. I couldn't save him, didn't need to. His time had come. But I sat on my floor above him for 6 hours, keeping vigil. When the glow finally faded, I called for a welfare check. They found him peaceful. That photo album still open to a picture of his late wife. The security guard at the bank, glowing, bright as a flare. I caused a scene, pretended to have a seizure right as he was about to confront a suspicious customer. By the time the chaos settled, the would-be robber had fled. The guard never knew he'd been 30 seconds away from a bullet. Each save got a little easier. Each death I couldn't prevent got a little harder, but I kept going. What else could I do? 3 months after the elevator, 6 months after that first flickering barista, I thought I had it figured out. The rules, the reasons, the responsibility. Then I looked in the mirror, and I was glowing. Not the soft shimmer of natural death, not the bright flare of preventable accident, something in between. Something wrong. I had 24 hours to figure out my own death. 24 hours to break the rules I'd been learning. 24 hours to understand why I could see death in the first place. The journal helped, reading back the tea-wheel through months of observations, looking for patterns I'd missed. And there, in the margins of my notes about Emma Morgan, I'd written something I'd forgotten. She said her dead mother warned her in a dream. What if the glow isn't prophecy? What if it's protection? I thought about every person I'd seen glowing, every death I'd witnessed or prevented. What if the light wasn't marking them for death? What if it was marking them for something else? My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Jack, this is Emma. Emma Morgan? My heart stopped. Emma? How did you... The police guy gave me your number. Said it was okay. I wanted to say thank you. You're welcome, sweetie. How are you? Are you safe? Yeah, my new foster mom is really nice. She has 3 cats. Jack? Yeah, I had another dream about my mom. The glow around me pulsed. What did she say? She said to tell you something. She said the people who glow aren't dying. They're being chosen. Chosen for what? To see. Like you do, but only if they're brave enough to look. The line went dead. When I tried to call back, the number was disconnected. I spent the next 12 hours researching. Hospital records, news archives, obituaries. Cross-referencing every glowing person I'd documented. The barista who'd died of a heart attack, her daughter had been born with cataracts, completely blind. The day after her mother's death, she could see. Mr. Petrov? He'd donated his corneas. The recipient had been in darkness for 5 years. The 8 people in the elevator. This took longer to trace. But 3 of them had organ donor cards. Their eyes had gone to people on waiting lists. People who could now see. But that didn't explain everyone. Didn't explain Mrs. Chen, who'd been cremated, or the teenager I'd saved at the skate park. Unless... I thought about Emma's words. About being chosen to see like you do. What if it wasn't about physical sight? What if some people, in their last moments, gained the ability to see death approaching others? What if they passed that sight on? Not through organs or genetics, but through something else. Through connection. Through caring. Through the simple act of one person trying to save another. The glow around me intensified. My 24 hours were almost up, but I wasn't scared anymore, because I understood now. The sight wasn't a curse, it was a gift. A chain of watchers, each passing the torch to someone who'd proven they could handle it. Someone who would use it to help, not hide. I'd been chosen by that barista, perhaps. In her final moments, she'd seen me. Really seen me. And known I would try to save others. Just as I'd chosen someone. Somewhere. in all my attempts to prevent death. Maybe the teenager. Maybe the security guard. Maybe someone I'd never even known was watching. The glow began to fade, not because I was dying, because I was passing it on. Somewhere out there, someone was waking up to a world where they could see the approaching darkness. Someone was discovering they had 24 hours to save a life. Someone was learning that death isn't always the end. Sometimes it's just a transformation. I hoped they would be braver than I was at first. I hoped they would understand faster. I hoped they would save more people than I did. But mostly, I hoped they would remember the most important rule. The glow isn't a warning, it's an invitation. An invitation to be the last kind face someone sees. To be the hand that pulls them back from the edge. To be the voice that says not today to death itself. My phone rings. Unknown number. Hello? Heavy breathing, panicked, young. I can see through walls, a voice whispers. I can see my roommate glowing. What's happening to me? I close my eyes, remember my own terror. Remember the barista's flickering hands. Listen carefully, I say. You have 24 hours. Here's what you need to know. The cycle continues. The watchers watch, and somewhere in the darkness, another light begins to glow. But wait, there's something I haven't told you. Something about you. Yes, you. Listening to this story in your bed, in your car, in the darkness of your room. Did you notice the way your screen flickered when I mentioned the elevator? The way your breath caught when Emma started glowing? That's not coincidence. Some people say they see auras. Some claim they have premonitions. Some wake up from dreams knowing things they shouldn't know. What if they're all seeing the same thing, just differently? What if you've been seeing it too and just didn't know what to look for? Think about it. That friend who called out of nowhere right when you were thinking about them. The stranger you felt compelled to talk to, who later told you that conversation saved their life. The time you absolutely knew not to get in that car, board that plane, walk down that street. We're all connected, all watching, all glowing in our own way. The question is, now that you know, what are you going to do about it? Sweet dreams, and remember, if you see someone glowing tonight, you know what to do. Story number 4. The X-ray machine hummed like a dying wasp trapped behind glass. I remember that sound perfectly, because it was the last normal thing I heard before Dr. Martinez showed me the image that would change everything. "Sarah," he said, and his voice had this weird tremor in it. Like when my dad told me our dog had to be put down. "I need you to look at this very carefully." The screen flickered. Black and white shadows danced across the monitor, and there, behind my regular teeth, were more teeth. Not just one or two stragglers, a complete third row. But here's the thing that still makes my skin crawl. They weren't growing down. They were growing up, into my skull. If you're listening to this in bed right now, maybe check your mouth. Run your tongue along the back of your gums. Feel anything unusual, because I didn't, not until it was too late. Drop a comment below if you've ever felt something strange in your mouth. And hit subscribe. Because what I'm about to tell you might just save your life. The story begins now. It started with a toothache 3 weeks ago. Nothing dramatic, just this dull throb in my upper left molar that Advil couldn't quite touch. I'd been putting off my dental checkup for, honestly, probably 2 years. Life gets busy when you're 28 and trying to make assistant manager at the Burlington Target. Dr. Martinez's office sat in one of those strip malls that every American town has. You know the type. Sandwiched between a Subway and a nail salon, with that weird medical smell fighting against fresh-baked bread. The waiting room had those uncomfortable chairs that stick to your thighs in summer, and magazines from 2019. Sarah Chen, the dental hygienist, called my name with that fake cheerfulness they all seem to have. Like they're genuinely excited about scraping plaque off strangers' teeth. The exam started normal enough. The taste of latex gloves, that awful gritty toothpaste, the hygienist making small talk about the weather while her hands were in my mouth. "Looks like you've been grinding your teeth," she said, frowning at something. "Dr. Martinez will want to take a closer look." 20 minutes later, Dr. Martinez came in. He'd been my dentist since I was 12. Watched me through braces, wisdom teeth, the works. Puerto Rican guy, mid-50s, with these kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. But he wasn't smiling now. "Open wide, Sarah." The metal explorer clicked against my teeth. Tap, tap, tap. Then he paused. The clicking stopped. That's never what you want to hear from a medical professional." He leaned in closer. I could smell his cologne, something woody and expensive. The overhead light burned into my retinas. "When did this pain start, exactly? Maybe 3 weeks?" I tried to talk around his fingers. He pulled back, peeling off his gloves with that specific snap that only medical gloves make. "I want to take some x-rays, just to be safe." The x-ray process was routine. "Bite down on this plastic thing. Hold still, don't breathe. That heavy lead apron always makes me feel like I'm being prepared for something apocalyptic." Click, buzz, click. "One more," Dr. Martinez said. His voice had changed, gotten tighter. I waited in the chair while he went to check the images. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, someone's car alarm went off. Normal Tuesday afternoon sounds. The last normal moments I'd have. When he came back, his face had gone pale beneath his tan. He pulled up a rolling stool and sat down, which was weird. Dr. Martinez always stood. "Sarah, I need to show you something, and I need you to stay calm." My heart started doing this weird flutter thing. "Is it cancer?" No, it's not cancer, it's..." He turned the monitor toward me. I've never seen anything like this in 30 years of practice. The x-ray filled the screen. My jaw, my teeth, all rendered in shades of gray. At first, everything looked normal. 2 rows of teeth, just like everyone else. But then he pointed to something behind them. Shadows that shouldn't be there. "These," he said, tracing the shapes with his pen, "appear to be additional teeth. A complete 3rd row." I stared at the screen. Counted. Behind each of my normal teeth sat another tooth. Perfectly formed. Waiting. That's not possible." "No," he agreed. "It's not. The human mouth can have supernumerary teeth, extra ones. But never a complete set, never arranged like this. So what do we do? Pull them out?" He zoomed in on the image. That's when I saw it. The thing that made my blood turn to ice water. "Sarah, look at the root direction. Normal tooth roots point down into your jaw. These didn't. These curved upward, disappearing into the darkness of my skull. They're growing into my brain." "Not into," he said quietly. "From. These teeth are growing from somewhere above your palate. Far above." The room suddenly felt too small. The dental chair too confining. I sat up, nearly knocking over the instrument tray. "I need to refer you to someone," Dr. Martinez said. "A specialist, Dr. Rebecca House at Northwestern Medical. She deals with unusual cases." "Unusual? This is unusual." He gave me this look, like he wanted to say more but couldn't or wouldn't. "Sarah, I need to ask you something. And please, be honest. Have you experienced any strange symptoms lately, besides the tooth pain?" I thought about it. "I've been having weird dreams." "What kind of dreams?" "About chewing. I wake up and my jaw is sore, and sometimes..." I hesitated. This was going to sound crazy. "Sometimes I wake up with this taste in my mouth, like copper, like blood. But there's never any blood." Dr. Martinez made a note. His hand was shaking slightly. "Anything else?" "Food tastes different sometimes. Meat especially. It tastes better, richer, and I've been craving it more. Is that related?" He didn't answer, just kept writing. "Dr. Martinez, you're scaring me." He set down his pen and looked at me. Really looked at me. Like he was seeing me for the first time. Sarah, I want you to see Dr. House as soon as possible. Tomorrow, if you can. I'll call ahead." He paused. "And Sarah? Don't do anything unusual with your mouth. No hard foods. No, just be careful. You're acting like these teeth are dangerous." "I don't know what they are," he admitted. "That's what scares me." I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that X-ray, those shadow teeth growing up into my skull like some kind of parasite. I kept running my tongue along my gums, searching for any bump or ridge that might indicate where they were hiding. 3 a.m. I gave up on sleep and Googled third row of teeth. Nothing. Supernumerary teeth growing upward. A few medical journal articles about individual cases, but nothing like mine. Teeth growing from brain. 0 results. It was like I had something that didn't exist. The next morning, I called in sick to work. My manager, Derek, sounded annoyed. "This is the 3rd time this month, Sarah." "I know, I'm sorry, it's medical. You need a doctor's note." "I'll get one." I hung up before he could lecture me about responsibility. Northwestern Medical Center loomed against the gray Chicago sky like a monument to human suffering. 20 stories of glass and steel filled with people facing their worst fears. Now, I was one of them. Dr. House's office was on the 7th floor. Oral and maxillofacial surgery, the sign said. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and fear sweat. An old man sat in the corner, holding his jaw. A teenage girl with gauze packed in her mouth scrolled through TikTok. Sarah Chen? Dr. Rebecca House wasn't what I expected. Young, maybe mid-30s, blonde hair in a perfect bun, designer glasses. She looked like she should be running a tech startup, not digging around in people's mouths. "Dr. Martinez sent over your x-rays," she said once we were in her examination room. I have to admit, I've never seen anything quite like this. "That's not reassuring." She pulled up the images on a massive monitor. "May I examine your mouth?" I opened wide. She had gentler hands than Dr. Martinez, but there was something clinical about her touch. Like I was a specimen. "Fascinating," she murmured. No visible eruption points, no inflammation of the gums. Yet the x-rays clearly show a 3rd row of teeth. Yeah, growing up into my head. She sat back, pulling off her gloves. "Tell me about your family history. Any unusual dental conditions?" "My mom had her wisdom teeth out. That's about it." "What about your grandparents, great-grandparents?" I shrugged. "My family's from Taiwan originally. My grandparents died before I was born." "Why?" She made a note. "Just gathering information. Now, I'd like to do a CT scan. Get a better look at the exact positioning and root structure. And then you'll remove them? Let's see what we're dealing with first." The CT scan machine looked like a plastic donut designed by aliens. I lay still while it hummed and clicked around my head, mapping the secrets hidden in my skull. Dr. House had me wait while she reviewed the results. I sat in that sterile room, counting the tiles on the ceiling. 64, 8 by 8, perfect square. When she came back, she had another doctor with her. Older guy, Indian, with thick glasses and nervous hands. "This is Dr. Patel from our research department," she said. "I asked him to look at your scans." "Research department?" My stomach dropped. "What kind of research?" Dr. Patel cleared his throat. "Miss Chen, what we're seeing in your scans is unprecedented. The teeth aren't just growing upward, they're connected to something." He pulled up the CT images. 3D renderings of my skull rotated slowly on the screen. The 3rd row of teeth glowed white against the gray of bone and tissue. But above them, where the roots disappeared, was something else. A dark mass about the size of a walnut. "What is that?" "We're not entirely sure," Dr. House admitted. "It appears to be some kind of organ, or growth, connected to your teeth by what looks like nerve tissue. A tumor." "No, tumors don't have this kind of organized structure." This is purposeful, deliberate. I stared at the thing in my head. It looked like a dark star with tendrils reaching down to each hidden tooth. I want it out, I said. All of it. The teeth, the whatever that is. Cut it out. Dr. House and Dr. Patel exchanged a look. It's not that simple, she said. The mass is integrated with several major nerve clusters. Removing it could cause paralysis. Or worse. Worse than having some alien thing growing in my head. Miss Chen, Dr. Patel said softly, have you experienced any behavioral changes recently? Dietary preferences? Sleep disturbances? I thought about the meat cravings, the dreams, the taste of copper. Why? We'd like to keep you for observation. Just for a few days, run some tests. What kind of tests? Another exchanged look. We need to understand what we're dealing with, Dr. House said. This could be some kind of evolutionary throwback, a dormant trait activated by environmental factors, or something else entirely. They gave me a private room on the 10th floor. Said it was for my comfort, but I noticed the locks on the door worked from the outside. The first night, they attached so many monitors to me I looked like a bargain bin cyborg. Heart rate, brain waves, blood oxygen, temperature. A nurse came in every 2 hours to check my vitals and draw blood. That's the 6th vial today, I told her. Her name tag said Monica, doctor's orders. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I tried to sleep, but the machines kept beeping. And my mouth hurt. Not just the original toothache anymore. This was deeper, like something was moving under my gums. Around midnight, the copper taste came back, stronger than before. I ran my tongue along my teeth and felt something, a ridge that hadn't been there before. I hit the call button. Monica came running. What's wrong? Something's happening. In my mouth, I can feel. She shined a penlight between my lips. Her face went white. I need to get Dr. House. Why? What do you see? But she was already gone. Dr. House arrived 15 minutes later, looking like she'd thrown clothes over her pajamas. She had 2 other doctors with her. Open your mouth, Sarah. I did. She leaned in with a dental mirror and explorer. Jesus Christ, one of the other doctors whispered. What? I tried to talk around her instruments. They're erupting, Dr. House said. The 3rd row. They're coming through. She held up a hand mirror. At first, I couldn't process what I was seeing. Behind my normal teeth, tiny white points had broken through the gums, the tips of the hidden teeth finally showing themselves. It's accelerating, Dr. Patel said from the doorway. Look at the monitors. My brain waves were going crazy, spikes and valleys like a seismograph during an earthquake. Sedate her, someone said. No, wait, we need to observe. The room started spinning. Or maybe I was spinning. The copper taste flooded my mouth, and suddenly I was so hungry. Hungrier than I'd ever been in my life. I gasped. I need meat. Raw meat. Please. They all stepped back from the bed. Get a psych consult, Dr. House ordered, and increase the restraints. I'm not crazy. But even as I said it, I could feel something changing in my brain, like doors opening in rooms I didn't know existed. They sedated me eventually, but the dreams that came were worse than being awake. I was running through a forest, not on 2 legs, on 4. The ground flew beneath me and I could smell everything. Rabbit warren to the left, deer trail crossing ahead, blood from a fresh kill 2 miles north. My mouth opened, and I had so many teeth, rows and rows of them, perfect for tearing, perfect for feeding. I woke up to find my bed surrounded by doctors. The clock said 6 a.m., but the room was blazing with lights. She's conscious, someone said. Dr. House leaned over me. Sarah, can you understand me? I nodded. My mouth felt different. Fuller. The transformation accelerated during the night. We need to do emergency surgery, remove what we can before... Before what? She hesitated. before the neural integration completes. The mass in your skull, it's not dormant anymore. It's activating parts of your brain that should be vestigial, primitive areas. If we don't act now, you'll lose who you are, Dr. Patel finished. The Sarah Chen personality will be overwritten by something much older. You're saying I'm turning into something else? We think this might be an evolutionary failsafe, he said. A genetic throwback triggered by unknown environmental factors. The third row of teeth, the neural mass. They're all part of something our species left behind millions of years ago. But why me? We don't know, but we need your consent for surgery, now. I thought about the dream, how good it felt to run, to hunt, to feed. Part of me wanted to say no, to let whatever was happening complete itself. That terrified me more than anything. Do it, I whispered. Cut it out. They prepped me for surgery within the hour. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I caught a glimpse of myself in a hallway mirror. My eyes had changed color. The brown was being invaded by flecks of gold. Wait, I said. But the anesthesia mask was already covering my face, and the world faded to black. I woke up wrong. That's the only way to describe it. Like someone had taken me apart and put me back together with pieces missing. Or maybe with new pieces added. The recovery room was dim. Machines beeped. My mouth was packed with gauze, and my head felt like someone had used it for batting practice. Sarah? Dr. House's voice. Can you hear me? I tried to nod. Pain shot through my skull. Don't move, the surgery was complicated. I made a questioning sound through the gauze. We removed 15 teeth from the third row. But Sarah, we couldn't get them all. And the neural mass, it was more integrated than we thought. We took what we could, but... She held up a specimen jar. Inside, floating in clear fluid, were teeth unlike anything I'd ever seen. They were white, yes, but with a translucent quality, like pearl mixed with glass, and they were sharp. So sharp. The remaining teeth have gone dormant again. We think. The neural activity has decreased, but we couldn't risk taking more without causing permanent damage. I reached up to touch my head. Bandages. So many bandages. There's something else, she said. The teeth we removed, they're not entirely human. The DNA is similar, but there are sequences we can't identify. Ancient sequences. Pre-human. She was still talking, but I'd stopped listening, because I could feel them. The teeth still hidden in my skull. Sleeping now, but not gone. Waiting. They kept me for another week. Tests, scans, blood work. The other teeth stayed dormant. The neural mass showed no activity. By all measures, I was healing normally. We'll need to monitor you, Dr. House said on discharge day. Weekly checkups. Any changes, any symptoms, you call immediately. What if they start growing again? Then we'll deal with it. But Sarah, what you have might be unique. You could help us understand human evolution in ways we never imagined. I don't want to be a science experiment. You won't be, I promise. Just be careful, and if you notice any behavioral changes, I'll call. But I was lying, because the changes had already started. Food tasted wrong now. Cooked meat was like ash in my mouth. But sushi, tartare, anything raw, sang on my tongue. I'd catch myself at the grocery store, standing in front of the meat counter, mesmerized by the red flesh behind the glass. The dreams continued. Not every night, but often enough. Running, hunting, feeding. And in those dreams, I wasn't alone. There were others like me. Lots of others, all hiding their extra teeth, all fighting the hunger. 3 weeks after surgery, I was back at work. Derek had put me on evening shifts as punishment for my absences. The store was quiet after 9, just me and a skeleton crew. I was restocking shelves when I smelled it. Blood, fresh blood. A customer had cut himself on a broken jar, nothing serious, just a gash on his palm. But the scent hit me like a drug. "You okay?" I asked, my voice strange in my own ears. "Yeah, just clumsy." He wrapped his hand in his shirt. "You got a first aid kit?" I led him to the office, my mouth watering. The remaining teeth in my skull seemed to pulse with my heartbeat. When I handed him the bandages, our hands touched, his blood smeared on my skin. I excused myself to the bathroom and locked the door, stared at the red smear on my hand. Every instinct screamed to taste it, to know. I washed it off instead, scrubbed until my skin was raw, but the smell lingered. That's when I knew the surgery had failed. Not in removing the teeth, but in removing what they represented. Whatever Dr. House had cut out, she'd left the most important part behind. The hunger. It's been 2 months now. I still go to my checkups, still pretend the dormant teeth are staying dormant, but late at night I can feel them moving, growing, preparing. Dr. House thinks she saved me, thinks she prevented some kind of evolutionary throwback from taking over. But she's wrong. You can't cut out what you are. You can only delay it. I know there are others out there. I see them sometimes. At the store, on the train, in coffee shops. We recognize each other by the way we stare at people's necks, by the way we linger near the meat counter, by the hunger in our eyes. We're not monsters. We're what comes next, what humanity is becoming, or maybe what it always was, underneath the civilization and cooked food and dental floss. The third row of teeth isn't an anomaly. It's an awakening. So let me ask you again. Have you been to the dentist lately? Had any strange dreams? Noticed any new cravings? Run your tongue along your gums right now. Feel carefully. Is that a new ridge forming? A tiny point of white pressing through? Don't worry. The hunger isn't so bad once you accept it. And there are so many of us now. So many awakening to what we really are. Dr. Martinez called yesterday. Said he's been having the dreams too. Said 3 more patients have come in with shadow teeth on their x-rays. It's spreading. Or maybe it was always there, waiting for the right time to emerge. So subscribe to this channel, share this story. Not because I need the views, but because you need to know the signs. Need to be ready when your teeth start growing. And if you're listening to this late at night, and you feel that first twinge in your jaw, that first taste of copper on your tongue, welcome to the evolution. We've been waiting for you. But wait, there's one more thing I need to tell you. Something I discovered just last week that changes everything. I went back to Dr. Martinez's office. Not for a checkup, but to confront him. The dreams had shown me things. Memories that weren't mine. Or maybe they were, just locked away until the teeth unlocked them. The office was closed, but I still had the spare key from when I house sat for him 2 summers ago. Yeah, my dentist trusted me with his keys. That's how long we'd known each other, how normal everything used to be. I found him in the back room, staring at x-rays. Not patient x-rays, his own. "How long?" I asked. He didn't turn around. "Since I was 17. 40 years, Sarah. 40 years of fighting it. You knew. When you saw mine, you knew exactly what they were. My grandfather had them too, and his mother. It skips generations sometimes, or lies dormant until something triggers it." He finally faced me. His eyes had the same gold flecks mine did. I thought if I became a dentist, I could find a cure. Help people like us. There are no people like us. We're something else. No. He stood up, shaking. We're human. We choose to be human. Every day we choose. But the hunger can be managed. I've done it for 40 years. He opened a mini fridge in the corner. Inside were medical blood bags. Donated blood. Animal blood from butcher shops. There are ways, Sarah, ways to feed without hunting. Yes. I thought about all those years of checkups, how he'd always been so gentle, so careful, This man, with rows of predator teeth hidden in his skull, had spent 4 decades caring for other people's mouths. Why didn't you tell me? Because I hoped I was wrong. Hoped yours were different. Some kind of mutation, not what we are. He sat down heavily. But when I saw the neural mass on your scans, I knew. You're not just growing teeth, Sarah. You're growing into what our ancestors were. What some of us still are. The others in my dreams are real, all over the world, hiding, feeding, some like me, fighting it. Others, he shuddered, others embracing it. There are entire communities, hidden towns where everyone has the third row, where they don't have to hide. Where? Sarah, no, you don't want that life. Trust me. But I did want it. Part of me, anyway. The part that grew stronger every day. The surgery, I said. Dr. House only removed some of the teeth. She couldn't remove what you are. No one can. The teeth will grow back. They always do. And each time they return, the hunger gets stronger. The change goes deeper. So, what do I do? He looked at me with such sadness. You choose. Every day, you choose. Human or something else. I left his office with more questions than answers. But now, I understood why he'd been so frightened. Not of what I had, but of what I might choose to become. That was a week ago. Yesterday I got a text from an unknown number. We know what you are. We can help. First meeting is tonight. Bring your hunger. I haven't responded yet. But tonight, when the moon rises and the teeth ache and the hunger sings, I might, so I'll ask one more time. Check your mouth. Check your family's mouths. Because we're not going away. We're not dying out. We're waking up. And whether we choose to be human or choose to be honest about what we are, we're here. We've always been here. Sweet dreams. Now, sleep. Or at least, try to. It's quiet now, too quiet, but not empty. That feeling crawling up your spine, that weight pressing on your chest, that's not your imagination. You're not alone. There's something behind the curtain. You haven't looked, not because you forgot, but because you're afraid to know. You heard the whisper, soft where wet, wrong. Like breath dragged across broken glass. But you told yourself it was the wind, didn't you? That lie made you feel safe. Temporarily. Let me ask you. Does the wind whisper your name? Does the wind tap lightly, again and again, from the same spot, behind the curtain, every night? Does the wind leave scratches on your window that weren't there this morning? Thin, sharp, like claws, like warnings. You don't remember opening the window. You never open the window. But it's unlocked now. You could check, you could stand up, you could walk over and pull the curtain back. But you won't. Because you know. You know what's waiting, not because you've seen it, but because you felt it. In the quiet, in the dark. Every time you close your eyes, every time you wake up and your blanket is just slightly moved. Your door slightly cracked. You try to explain it. Your mind wants to explain it. But that whisper, that sound that only comes when you're alone, when everything is still, when the night is at its deepest, that's not a dream, that's a presence. It doesn't want your fear, it wants your attention. It feeds on the moment you doubt yourself. The second you wonder if you heard something, the instant your heart rate rises. That's when it leans closer. It's been patient, watching, learning you like prey. You ever notice it never shows up when the lights are on, when someone's in the room? Number. It waits for the ritual, the brushing of your teeth, the turning off of lights, the last look at your phone, the deep breath just before sleep. That's when it wakes up. That's when it stirs behind the curtain. Sometimes it watches you all night. Sometimes it moves. A shift in the shadow. A faint creak on the floorboards. The sound of fabric sliding over skin. And when you don't check, when you ignore it, That's when it comes closer. Not fast, not loud, just closer. You might feel a cold spot on the bed. You might feel breath on your neck. You might hear a whisper in your ear that sounds almost like your voice. It copies, it mimics, it blends, not to confuse you, to prepare you, because soon it won't need the curtain, it won't need shadows, it will sit beside you, stand behind you, speak through you. You won't even know when it happens. You'll wake up, look in the mirror, and something will be off. Your eyes won't blink quite right, your smile will linger too long. Your reflection will move just a little after you do. And the people around you? They'll say you seem different. Not worse, just not you. But tonight you're still you. Still in control, for now. You could still check. You could still confront it. Pull the curtain back, face it, but deep down, you've already made your choice. You won't. Because you'd rather lie still, let your eyes drift shut, and hope sleep comes quickly. And it will. But what you wake up as might not be the same. Now, if you've made it this far, congratulations. You're not just a viewer, you're part of something bigger. Something that watches with you, that sits beside you as you watch, as you listen, as you wait. Because this story doesn't end when the screen fades to black. It follows you into the next room, into your dreams, into your reflection. If you liked this story, like, share, and subscribe, so you don't miss the next one, so we don't miss you. And comment below. Tell us the moment you stopped feeling alone. We're watching, we're listening, and we read everything. Now, go ahead, gain the courage to check the dark corners before you sleep. Turn off the lights, close your eyes, sleep well, if you can.